everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your natal Mars in the fifth house. So Mars is the god of war, and it has to do with conflict, your drive, so your ambition. It has to do with courage, anger, how it is expressed, the sex drive. The fifth house is the house of love, but if we're talking about passion, physical passion, it is premarital relations. So whether that's love that is occurring, on the dating scene, premarital sex, or any kind of like affair would qualify as that as well. This is the house of creativity, but it's also the house of creating children. And any kind of fun pastimes, including parties, sporting events, and they could be you participating in sports, concerts, creative pursuits, so anything that you do that is creative. So when somebody has their natal Mars in the fifth house, it's a very good placement because the fifth house is the house that Leo rules. Leo is a fire sign, so this is a fire house. Mars is a fire planet because it rules Aries. It also co-rules Scorpio, and Scorpio's a water sign, so you could say, well, it's not totally, but it really is connected to kind of that fiery energy because it is very passionate. It's very enthusiastic. That's why it's about drive. And so when you have it in a good place, that means it's going to operate, pretty much in a good way. People who have Mars in the fifth house are naturally very active. And so they're happiest when they're on the go. They don't want to necessarily sit still. Sports can be a big part of your life. Even if you're not a professional athlete, you will very likely have some kind of sport that you do as a hobby. It could be belonging to an amateur softball league, or maybe it's some individual sport. Maybe you like to run and you train for the marathon each year. You have a competitive spirit, so you need to channel that in some way. So team sports, I guess I could see, but even if you're doing it for yourself, obviously, if you're running a marathon, you're going to be competing with other people. So any kind of hobby that you have that you can kind of channel that passion and put that passion into is great because this is the house of creativity, so it can make you very enthusiastic about creating artistic projects. This is also the house of children. And so Mars can sometimes be, what you're doing for your work. You could be working with children in some capacity. If you have children, you will likely be good with them, and even if you're working with them, because you are very active, and that kind of mirrors how the average child is. Sometimes adults are very kind of cranky because the kids are so active and they feel like they're hyper and they don't want to keep up with the child. They're telling the child to slow down or to sit still because they don't want to have to actually get active with that child. That's not going to be you. And you're playful. Actually, somebody with Mars in the fifth house is like having Mars in Leo. So you might actually have a very colorful style and be very dramatic, be very expressive in how you if you're even like if you are artistic, you might have like almost like an expressionist style, like as a painter, that has very, bright, bold colors, very, attention grabbing, versus impressionism, which is kind of muted and more like blending in, not these bold, brush strokes. I could see somebody with Mars in the fifth house being very popular and being invited to parties because of that very expressive style that is entertaining to other people because you're so dramatic. And another thing too is that because the fifth house can be pleasurable activities and Mars is very active here, you are going to be more on the extroverted side. So that is a good fit for what this house represents. Now, in terms of your love life, you can be a very passionate lover and you can be a good lover. You can be talented in this area. The only thing is, you could be very focused on sex in terms of your relationships. Now, it's important to differentiate the fifth house from the seventh house. The seventh house is committed partnership. As I stated, this is premarital relations. But, we can call those relationships too. It's just that they may not be as committed. And, but they can lead to commitment eventually. I would say personally that if you tend to get involved in physical or sexual activity in your relationships prematurely, you may find that they don't go anywhere because they might end up being one-dimensional. Now, because you place a high importance on sex in these romantic interactions, it may be very hard for you to see that this isn't necessarily the best policy. And so you may just keep doing it over and over again until you finally get the memo that it's leading to a dead end. And this may take quite a while, especially if you're, I would say, like over the age of 30 and you are ready to settle down and you're scratching your head and saying, why don't any of these relationships materialize? And if you do that soul searching, you'll say, well, I guess I'm too much being too premature in the physical relationship, and I need to get to know somebody better so that I don't kind of like end up spinning my wheels in these romantic dalliances. And another thing to note too is that if we have to look at the sign that Mars is in, and yes, of course, the sun and other elements here, but for instance, if your Mars is in a sign like Aries, I would say Aries, Taurus, Leo. This could be, I think these are like highly sexed signs. So with Mars being the libido, that could be like very much front and center, and that could exacerbate those tendencies. Now, in terms of children, the fifth house can be the type of children that you have. I read somewhere else that it was the firstborn child. It can describe them. On advancedastrology.com, thank you to them for providing this material. Well, some of it I kind of came up on my own or improvised, but in any case, they mentioned children in general, so that's why I'm saying it, but I read other sources that said the firstborn child. But you can have high energy children because Mars is so active. If your children, if you have an an afflicted Mars. So if you have squares or opposition to Mars, you may have some kind of pain in association with children. So there might be some kind of negative thing that arises because of your decision to have children. Doesn't mean that it's going to be the end all be all in terms of negativity, but just bringing that up. And Mars can indicate dangers that can arise in the person's life, and we have to look at the sign in the house. In the fifth house, it can be via gambling, because the fifth house is speculation. So it could indicate that you're overly optimistic and that you're reckless when it comes to gambling. So just keep that in mind, because you could have a disaster on your hands if you think that you're going to win and you don't. So anyway, that's what I have for you. I hope that you resonated with this. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.